Hey everyone, this is my review of Immortals, Tarsem Singh's new movie, and really, as to my knowledge at least, his first commercial movie in quite a while, at least since The Cell. Is this movie worth seeing? I know a lot of particular people I've been talking to say the advertising is very reminiscent of 300. No doubt that they're going for that same kind of audience, from the advertising at least. And after seeing the film, no. Actually, that's unfortunate to say. It's not a bad movie. It really isn't a bad movie. If you're really into historical action and you liked the trailers a good deal, I'll admit only until later in the advertising campaign was I actually intrigued by the movie. Before I thought it was just rather bland. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the case. But like I said, I wasn't hooked until later than this, and I like historical action. I particularly like a lot of Greek myth. I like when they intersperse that kind of visual style that's interesting and new, and Tarsem Signh, for all his faults, definitely has that, and in spades in this movie in particular. In the end, though, after watching the movie, it's really just not one of those movies that you're going to go out and see and really enjoy and tell your friends, hey, you need to go and see this as well. It's a passable action movie. It's got some good sequences in it, and heavens knows the costume designers assuredly earned their paycheck, because there are quite literally some things in this movie I've never seen before in my entire life, and they're very interesting. We'll go into those in a couple of minutes, though. To start, what is the plot? Well, the plot is every other big, action movie or fantasy movie that you've ever seen. Theseus, in this case, the main character, starts out as a nobody, gets raised as a powerful warrior, and ends up saving all of the Hellenic world from King Hyperion, who is out to get this mythical bow left over from the war between the gods and the Titans that can release the Titans, and he's got this backstory that he spouses in the first couple of minutes, but I won't spoil at any rate why he hates the gods. And Theseus is your typical reluctant hero, doesn't really know if he wants to do this, doesn't know if he even believes in the gods, but of course is very quickly sorted out. There's a love interest in this movie in the form of a virginal seer. Bet you can guess where that's going. I think that's the fault of the movie, the biggest fault of the movie, to be perfectly honest. You know exactly where it's going, and while undoubtedly there's not a huge amount of different plots that you can use for these characters and for this kind of setting, in fact, if you're telling an epic story, you really want to rely on a lot of these archetypal characters, in situation. But at the same time, I just can't help but feel that because this movie really uses legends loosely, it feels a little bit off. You're going through it, you're watching it, and you're like, oh, it's not quite how I pictured it. And it's never really specified in the movie whether it's the same or it's different. But the problem is, it has elements of both, and by picking and choosing, it just doesn't feel quite right, doesn't mesh with itself, and in fact leaves itself open to some odd plot holes, to be honest. That said, the climax is appropriately exciting, easily the best part of the movie. What you see in the trailer is a lot of the gods themselves coming down to battle. That is unfortunately from the climax, almost exclusively. There's a few other moments in the movie, but you don't see them nearly as much as the trailers would imply. And the second biggest fault of that movie is the advertising lies to you, because as we all know, advertising lies to you, but I really would have thought that there would have been more godly action in this film. And it makes sense within the context of the plot why there is not, but if you're going to advertise it that way, you're going with those specific expectations, and if they're not met, what can I say? I'm not going to like it as much. In the trailer, you see Poseidon jump from Mount Olympus all the way down to the ocean, creating this enormous tidal wave, and it is a really cool scene. And there's a couple other things. You see the gods moving in super fast motion, fighting the Titans, and just different things like that, where you're like, wow, this looks really visually interesting and spectacular. And there are those moments. There's just not enough of them. Whenever you see Theseus fighting, or rather getting his ass kicked, as tends to happen quite a bit in this movie, it's just not really that entertaining. You've seen a lot of it before, and again, you know where these plots are going. A lot of the side characters don't even make sense. Like, one guy who ends up traveling with our hero and his band of merry men is he's this thief who initially, upon meeting him, says, "Oh, wow, I don't know why I should travel with you, and you can't convince me, even when you're going to kill me." Until the main character says, "Fine, screw you, I'm going by myself." To which his immediate response is, "Okay, I'll come with you." What? There's a lot of little things like that throughout the movie. Just don't make a whole lot of sense. Don't gel. The characters aren't interesting either. There's really no one in this movie I gave a shit about, frankly. King Hyperion's the most interesting, but he tends to repeat himself quite a bit and doesn't really have anything new to offer throughout the film. He only becomes interesting, again, in the climax when you see more of him and his interactions with the main character and the people you've also been watching throughout the rest of this. That said, like I said at the beginning of this review, if you're into historical action and big fantasy epics, this might be worth catching in a matinee, and particularly rental. You know, if you're just renting this movie, honestly, I have very low bars for rentals. If you just like this type of movie, you know what? You're going to have fun with it. It's big budget. You're not going to really remember it. It's certainly not going to stack up against the likes of 300 or something like that, which is a much better done movie. But you'll get a fun night out of it. And you know, sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, the marketing made it seem like it's aspiring to be more. So it doesn't quite reach the high watermark that you'd think it would want to, and you would want it to, but it's still fun. And that is largely, as I say, because of the climax, which is very exciting, intermixes a great amount of epic warfare. It has the gods battling the Titans. You got Theseus and King Hyperion duking out in this really violent, like, fisticuffs, and it's a lot of it's really exciting to watch, and particularly I like the end, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, another weird thing. It goes unexplained. Even at 2 hours, this movie seems oddly condensed, or rather, there's too many things that it's brought up and it should have focused down. Either way, it's just not really balanced well, but the things that you will see it for are said climax and the visual design. Tarsem Singh's visual design for this is really fascinating. A lot of bland environments. It has kind of a gold, sepia-toned, honey hue to it that gets a little tiresome, actually, near the end, but works throughout the majority of the movie. And there's a really fantastic contrast between the gods themselves and regular mortals. Regular mortals just look like average people, Hollywood average people. And the gods come down fully golden clothing. They've got, just like the leotard on, they've got this huge flowing capes behind them, and this movie, it should be called Funny Headgear, the movie. Their headgear is just absolutely fascinating and weird and wonderful to look at, that even if you kind of chuckle at it because of its really how odd it is, it really does differentiate in your mind the gods and make them much more fantastical and really what gods should be like. Particularly I love when it actually clips to the gods in Mount Olympus. Very much what you'd expect gods to be doing, constantly just looking down on Mount Olympus, basically just laxing or laying back and totally chillaxing by the side. And again, really cool. They have some interesting things that are going on there, but there's just not enough of it, and that's unfortunate. The music is equally as forgettable. Honestly, you're never going to even remember it, probably even when you come out of the movie. It's been a couple days since I've seen it. I could not tell you a single sample. I couldn't even hum it to you. But in the end, I suppose my final recommendation would be, it's not a terrible movie, it's just an okay one. It's fun to see if you go see with other people and you go in with the right expectations, maybe not expecting a huge amount. I think you'll have fun with it. Don't pay full price for it. The 3D is pretty useless. It really doesn't add almost anything to it, despite the visual style. You're not losing anything by not seeing this in theaters, but if it's your type of movie, what do I know, right? You might enjoy it a little more than I did. Just don't go in with too high expectations.